Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Glad to have all of you here today. Thank you for joining us for our last May meeting of the fiscal year, too, right? Our year's over, right?
No, still have June.
June. Okay, we said June. One more. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. And if you'll start with the roll call.
Mr. Hines?
Present.
Ms. Jiggets?
Present.
Mr. Kelly?
Present.
Ms. Revel? Here. Mr. Scott? Mr. Thomason?
Present.
Mr. Thompson, you have a quorum.
All right. Fantastic. All right, everyone. Well, we've got the minutes. You have received the minutes. Have everybody reviewed the minutes? Questions or comments or a motion?
Motion to approve minutes.
Have a second.
Second.
Just need a roll call. Okay, roll call. Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Abstain, I was not here.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
3 and an abstention. Motion carries. Minutes are approved.
All right, fantastic. And now we will move into the financials.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to start with page 1 of the financial statements, which is the unaudited statement of net position. For cash pool, there's a change of $19,587.74, and those are expenses which will be explained on page 2. We did receive $15,546.22 in deposits, and $5,000 of that was a deposit that we received from 1541 High Street Partners, and that's escrowed until the completion of the contract. There's also $2,877 showing as accounts payables, and those are just invoices that were booked, but the check was not cut. So the change in net position is $11,885.45, which brought the total net position to $13,723,849.27. On page 2, there were some expenses that were paid. We paid $2,400 in environmental work on 3125 Victory Boulevard, the wetlands. $7,833.07 was paid for ground maintenance, legal fees, and utilities for the development properties. $1,122 was paid for training. For the non-operating income and expenses, EDA did receive $10,579.29 in lease income and interest. Of that, $10,416.67 was transferred back to the city. So that showed that change in net position also of $11,885.45. On page...
One second. Just before you move on there, on the training, the 1122, was that
Yes.
for the reimbursement for the VITA training?
Yes, that was, I think 3 persons went to training for a conference. So that's what that was for.
Right, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so on page 3, and that is the unaudited development properties for resale. It showed the $7,833.07, as was mentioned, for expenses that were paid on developmental properties. And it just gives the different addresses that the expenses went toward. And that brought the total investment on development properties to $10,855,656.42. All right, on page 4, your Schedule B, that's just more details on the expenses that were paid through March. we did pay $312,705.20. Add the April expenditures to that. That gives you year-to-date through April of $320,538.27. That's your year-to-date expenses for development properties. And then on page 5, which is your cash detail, you will see cash and temporary investment balance as of April 30th of $1,993,889.72. There were no grants that were paid, so there was no activity for the grants for that period. So the total still available for grants is $165,819.30. So the last page was just your unaudited cash pool on page 6. We started April with $100,009.42. That's the beginning balance as of 3/31/17. The pool cash outflow is $19,587.74. That's all the expenses that were paid for April. And so we ended April with cash pool of $119,597.16, and that will be settled at some point in this month. And the bottom section just kind of gives you a summary of all the expenses that were paid through April.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn. Any questions on the financials?
Mr. Thomason, I was going to ask Mr. Kelly if you'd weigh in as well as our
Well,
treasurer.
no, what I was just going to weigh in first of all was I wanted to thank them for the side-by-side month over month. I don't know if the other commissioners found that helpful, but I think it's very nice seeing the prior month with the current month, and you see the change in activity on every GL. Kind of lets you know where the activity takes place. It also helps a lot of commissioners focus on where the questions that they may need to have asked by. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
I was just going to ask Mr. Kelly to weigh in. Thank you.
Okay.
Approving financials as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second?
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott, we're approving the financials if you...
Abstain.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
Motion carries. Financials are accepted as presented.
All right.
I saw an email.
All right, so we're going to move into old business. Everybody remember, we have the meeting coming up in a couple of weeks with our joint meeting with council. That's Monday, June the 12th at 6 p.m. Is it Bobby?
No, it's here.
Here, okay, sorry, here.
Here in this room, in fact.
Okay, all right, and does everybody plan on attending that?
Yes, sir.
All right, fantastic. All right, Mr. Ashby, you want to?
Mr. Chairman,
One question regarding your meeting. Are you planning to have a PowerPoint and an overview?
Yes, just like we did for the PPIC, which we'll review
I
with the
was just-
chair and you.
Just going to mention that the PPIC met with council this past week, and Chairman Barham made a presentation that was outstanding and set the tone for great discussion. And he was the first chair of all the meetings that have been held to have such a presentation. So I'm glad that the EDA will have an introductory PowerPoint and presentation that should spur some great discussion.
Thanks, no pressure there, Ned.
Well, thanks.
You and I talked, what, a week or so ago about this, so
Yeah, I know, I just-
we'll be in collaboration over the
Very
next.
good.
Yeah. All right. So, Mr. Ashby.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I just wanted to update you and make you aware that on June 19th, retired Judge Lowe out of, I believe it's either Newport News or Hampton, I believe it's Newport News, will be hearing the motion to dismiss in the Victory Crossing matter. At that time, he will have an opportunity to look at the matter and determine if there's anything that's set for, that's probably before the court to move forward and marshal the rest of the litigation, or determine if there's some part of it that may perhaps be subject to arbitration. And so we should hear a bit more between this meeting and the next meeting. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to some new business.
In front of you, everyone should have an invitation. Each of the commissioners should have an invitation to the Harbor Vista grand opening to be held on the 14th at 4 o'clock in the afternoon across the street. So if you would, please RSVP on your behalf. There is information on the invitation for that. You may have received one of these at home as well, but in the event that you did not, here is your official invitation, and please do RSVP directly to Breeden, and certainly hope you all can make it. This board was very involved in that development, and it looks good, and it'll be an exciting time to see the facility.
All right, thank you. All right. Moving on. All right, we're going to review some of the information from the Virginia Industrial Development Association meeting. Looking for some feedback. Who's all of them? Okay, so Mr. Hines, would you like to start us off then?
Sure, I'd love to kick that off. Commissioner Scott Revel joined myself during the most recent VITA training in Charlottesville, and it was a great 2 days of learning and learning from some industry leaders, but also learning from some best practices at some of the other localities and some of their success stories that aren't that much larger than us, comparable size to us, I would say. They really just took advantage of some of their natural resources in surrounding areas, which certainly was a big takeaway for me. And each one of us, I think all of us kind of took away something a little bit different. So I'm just going to start with what I kind of took away from. I was really impressed by some of the things that Harrisonburg is doing there, and their small business loans, which is something I've talked about with a number of commissioners over time. That they do small business loans, $25,000, 1 to 5 year terms, 4.5% interest rate. It helps them with machine and equipment purchases, which actually I think would be also beneficial to our tax rates for machine and purchases even. So I think it could help everybody all around. I thought that was a very good program. I would love for us to maybe look at. And again, that's maybe bring some revenue in, but also may help those small businesses grow. And I thought what was really their strong takeaway is they don't necessarily just worry about getting a business in, but they also are very concerned about keeping that business in business. And I think that's an area we could improve on as well, as a city. But overall, I thought they did a good job. Lynchburg, I thought another great program they did was a program which was for entrepreneurs that are interested. It was a 9-week program. They basically walked them through how to become a citizen in their city in Lynchburg, and I think that would be pretty helpful, especially in some of our areas like downtown. I think that would be a great program to have, especially people that are having to go through design committees and things of that nature. Maybe have like a checklist, maybe even bring some industry leaders in, or even companies have been in business for 5, 10, 15 years in Portsmouth to kind of mentor them through and being able to do that. So we walked away with a lot of really good ideas, a lot of really good programs. And then I did have one thing I thought was really important. I know we discussed it at the last retreat, But I think it would be good for us to kind of review all of the abilities for financing that the EDA would have, that maybe we can help bring some more development in. There was a lot of discussion around that, and especially for the new commissioners, I think that would be helpful if we could have a little bit more in-depth conversation around that. With that, I'll turn it over to the other commissioners.
Mr. Scott?
With the piggyback on what Commissioner Hines said, I agree with most of his observations. The thing that stood out to me was that, and I'm new, so I'm still, maybe it's here and I just hadn't seen it yet. One of the things that jumped out at me is that the ones that are, some of the EDAs that are a little bit more ahead of the curve, they were classifying every single one of their properties and putting them in a category that's labeled where they were on the spectrum, whether they were ready to sell right now, whether they were ready to build, were they shovel ready right now, or were they down the road, where do we need to have them in a planning stage? They had them categorized, stage 1, 2, 3, 4 is where they were. One of the things that I heard last meeting when I was here, we were talking about, I think, the bakery, and it was talking about some of the questions that were environmental questions that needed to be addressed or whatnot. And it seems like to me some of those questions and concerns, it would be, if it was categorized, we know right now all of that stuff was already done, the environmentals was ready, it was shovel ready, and it was ready to sell, as opposed to it just gotten on the books. I looked at some of the properties that we have now. They've been on the books. I haven't been around long enough, but they've been on the books for a long time, looks like to me. I don't know where they are in the stages of economic development, whether they're a lost cause or whether they need to be, and therefore you need to do a different type of marketing for that property, or whether they are properties that we have a high regard for, and we believe that that's going to be something done. But I think one of the things that they did that jumped out to me during the entire time was the ones that the EDAs that seem to be able to get things on and move things out faster, and with the financing available, were the ones that were able to categorize where those properties were. And I'd like to see something like that done with our portfolio, where we kind of understand where it is, if it's shovel ready, if its environmentals have been done, whether there's been any interest, whether there are deals on or off. I think that would be very, very helpful for somebody new like me to see where they are in the categories. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And what we did our last retreat, we actually got in a van and drove around to some of the properties, and we directed our real estate to where we wanted them to focus based on where we felt like was the most return, where they were, what the market was looking like, some other things. So we did spend some time on that. So we'll hopefully get you up to speed on that as we...
And I guess it was more data-driven, though. It was more numbers-driven. It was more, here's what we've invested, here's what our return on investment, what we expect to be, here's what we spent. I mean, there's just a lot more data-driven about just a list of properties. And I guess as I move forward here, I'm going to be looking for that, and I'll be asking for that. And I got some of the information, and hopefully I'll be able to get with some stuff offline just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, because I think it's a lot more detailed than us unprofessionals riding around looking at properties. I'd like to see some more professional preparation around the categorization of those properties, the classifications of those properties, where they are in the pipeline, as well as what's the expected return, what's already been spent, data-driven decisions that we can make regarding these properties. I know you guys are doing it, and if y'all are doing it already, I hadn't seen it, but the report that I saw last time from the real estate people, coupled with the report that we had here, I just don't see that categorization. I'm not saying it's not there in our minds, so I just hadn't seen it.
Yes.
Clearly, Mr. Scott, what you saw at your conference and what you're asking for is something that the city really needs to do. And when I say that, when we look at the EDA properties, whatever number you have, there are 372 plus properties that are in this city that are vacant, that are under PRHA. And both planning and Mrs. Butler has been working with Mr. Donahue over at PRJ. But we have properties that have been vacant since 1971, purchased with CDBG monies through PRHA, and here we are in 2017, and 300 and something plus are still where they were since 71. So it is definitely something that we need to do, both collectively with EDA and with PRHA properties, so we'll know what we have, what the status. Are they parcels that are behind somebody's house that they can just kind of have to write it to them as back in the 80s we did with small parcels, but definitely what you're saying is something that we need to work collectively on.
And we have bits and pieces of what you're talking about. I mean, the financial report does give you an accurate accounting of all EDA titled properties every single month, but we can add to that which ones have had surveys done, which ones have had phase 1s and phase 2s, what the current zoning is. We can elaborate on that pretty easily and then see where the gaps are.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at it like it's a way of prioritizing where we need to be.
Right.
Why would we be spending time and energy on properties that really are not ready to hit market? So why not prioritize, put our energies on those properties that we can get into commerce and get online, and those properties that are not, we can build a plan to get those properties there. And I think that's what I was listening to when I was there. I was like, man, that's something that I think that we should be doing. And am I saying
You're
right?
100% right, and just to kind of the Timmons Group, and I think PPIC had one of their commissioners was there with us as well, and talked with their group about the Timmons Group presentation. And I think those were very enlightful. But the things that really, what they said, their trends in economic development is that projects are now moving in months instead of years. Those sites that are ready are the ones that are being zeroed in on and targeted for development. And most larger companies are looking for that public and controlled, ready-to-go site. And so, but you have to have, like we talked about when we acquired the last 2 pieces of property, you have to have inventory on your shelves. Now the question is our inventory really ready for the market, or do we need to look at what type of investment we need to put into it, not just as an EDA, but also as a city? And that was the other common thread with these other cities, was that there was not just development investment money going in from the EDA side of money, but there was money coming in from the city's coffers into the EDA to make these sites ready, infrastructure ready. So that way when you had your real estate person or Mallory showing something, they could come in and say, this thing is ready to go. And that seems to be where the market was going according to this presentation, which I'm going to share with everybody. I think these presentations were very good. I think I can send them that email to everybody.
And just by example, we have a collaborative effort with EDA in the city already. As you mentioned, the 2 properties that this body bought at auction as long-term redevelopment, knowing that they were not market ready. The 2 properties on High Street, we've partnered up with both Public Works and engineering to collaborate on the costs relative to remediation, and the CIP over the next several years has money for demolition. And so there is city and EDA money, even though it's all city money at the end of the day, but there is collaboration between those 2 finance.
We're inviting the
sources.
Timmons Group to host a presentation with council and the EDA will be invited, and the PPIC will be invited, and Mrs. White is working on the time frame for that meeting or presentation.
Yeah, and I want to get to Ms. Revel, but the Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance, the last meeting that they had brought in some consultants, and they had a panel discussion, and one of the panelists had made the comment, learning how to box above your weight class in order to achieve better success than those around you. And they attributed that to the ability for the cities to work collaboratively with the other cities around them. And although we're not in control of how the other cities are, certainly, and I'm talking off the top of my head, it seems like collaboratively we should be looking with the PPIC and the PRHA, the city and ourselves, as to if there is going to be a qualification criteria, and then back to what is the major directive, like with the facade improvement, all the LIPS programs were put together in the corridor we did because of long-term planning was going to be the biggest bang for our buck over time. So maybe we can have some discussion about this further at one of our meetings about how we can do that, or even talk to some of the other chairs and see what that would look like to have a.
And just also, not to cut you off there, but you're 100% right. The very first thing that came out of their mouth was prospects and consultants look at regions, not necessarily sites or localities.
So, Ms. Revel, would you
Yes,
please share
I'd
with
like
us?
to parrot a lot of what they said, and I don't want to elaborate on that because the other two commissioners that attended with me did such a good job. But my takeaway point, it was very helpful for me as a new commissioner to learn about the legalities of what we do as an EDA, and things that the city can't do for itself, the laws concerning confidentiality and FOIA requests and all that was very, very helpful to me. But the takeaway point from the presentations, too, was back to the other localities, places like Harrisonburg and Lynchburg, and how they have creatively taken the resources that they have and made grants available to prospective business owners, the $25,000 loan in Harrisonburg. But in Lynchburg, they created not only zones like enterprise zones, but they created art zones, tourism zones, things that we could do here because of the natural resources that we have here, the port and the history that we have here, things that I don't see us doing, maybe we are doing, but I just haven't seen that, taking advantage of the history and making that a priority to help businesses that might attract tourists and travelers so that they're spending their tax dollars here and our citizens don't have to have, the taxes going up because we're getting lots of tourists and travelers into our city. So that's one area that was a takeaway point for me. And also, the shovel-ready properties, there was a lot of time spent on that. So it was very helpful, and I'd like to, to thank the EDA for the opportunity for me to go and learn all of this. It's very helpful.
Thank you very much. All right.
If I may add one other item that I thought was very interesting, especially with Lynchburg, when we talk about the entrepreneur piece, is they did actually launch a web portal on their web with a link that tied to videos by local entrepreneurs for other entrepreneurs. And again, I think that's really an important piece here is that we try to grow our own entrepreneurs and in our own backyard. Because I think there's some resource, but I think there's with the limited staff that you guys work with, maybe some sort of technology resource that would be helpful to other businesses. That was very successful in Lynchburg. So.
There was one other thing, was the opportunity to meet Grant from the Ports and Industrial Commission and learn about the overlap between what they do and what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also,
That was eye-opening.
maybe more collaboration, like has been mentioned before, with that group and also with PRHA because of the number of properties that they own. So a lot of opportunity for us to.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to go.
I have a question to the group. What is the economic development staffing for Lynchburg and Harrisonburg? Do you know?
I remember the lady from Lynchburg saying that she had 3 people in her office.
She had 3,
and
yeah.
And she had 7 or 8 7 commissioners that she worked with. So
What about Harrisonburg?
that I don't remember.
I don't think he mentioned that.
He didn't mention it.
Okay, because I bring that up because in all that you are referring to, what we call in the economic development arena, proactive business development, one of the things that is of a concern is that there needs to be an increase in the staffing for Portsmouth Economic Development Department in order for the Director of Development to be able to proactively move out and do the things as this commission is talking about and seeing in other cities. We've got to increase the staffing. That is a given. That is the only way that the issues that we feel need to be addressed can be achieved. We can't do it with a 2-person department. And I say 2-person in Mr. Moore and Mallory. And of course, they have their support staff, but more is needed in terms of full-time staffing.
We have a vacancy that we've done some interviews for, and we should be coming to a full staff very soon.
Do you consider just filling that one vacancy being enough?
I think as we prioritize our work and do the most important work that we can do, we'll be fine.
Okay. The other thing is just to say, we just need to go back for the budget. We sort of skipped over that.
We'll get a closed session if that's all right.
Yeah, okay.
I have
I did run right past it, apologize, thank you.
That's okay.
Yes, Mr.
It's all
Kelly.
right. I'd just like to chime in. I think these are excellent opportunities when you go to these VITAs or the METAs or wherever they are, the future trainings. They're perfect grounds to be able to talk with other people, and as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. You pick up things from other localities and each other. I would love the idea of the mini loan. We looked at that a few years ago, and one of the biggest struggles with that, and if you've got a good contact in Harrisonburg, I'd love to hear how they actually implemented it, because when you have multiple loans and there are multiple interest rates and trying to track the monthly payments, you almost have to have a full-time person staff just to handle the loans, the payments, the deferrals. If somebody doesn't pay, how do you accumulate late penalties and everything else? And then the other issue was we actually looked here into, we talked to 3 different banks about doing participation programs with the banks, and I think they found it very difficult to try to morph something into doing that. I would love to see how they form that, how they put that together, especially with banking regulations. We thought it might open up a little exposure to us as well. But if they have a model and they don't mind sharing it, I think that'd be something that'd be excellent to help grow.
They would be delighted to.
Yeah, if they could, I think it'd be wonderful. Mentioning the multiple properties on the books with PRHA and with us, about 4 years ago, we formed something called the Properties Commission. It consists of the PRHA, economic development, private folks in the community. It also included people from appraising, planning, engineering. They all sat down at the same table, and we went through all those properties, and we prioritized many of them. Over time, it just fizzled out, and people just stopped meeting. But it was, at first, pretty strong. It got together where you had top 10 properties to look at for future development, and we had what to do with the ones that were currently on the books. I'd love to revive that again and see what we could do with it. And that goes directly to what you're talking about, what's shovel-ready, what is not shovel-ready. I think when we close on properties and we buy them, I think it's standard to get a phase 1, phase 2 if the phase 1 has any issues. So like Director Butler mentioned, I think a lot of that stuff's at our fingertips. If it's just a matter of putting it into a spreadsheet to help you see it better, that's an excellent idea as well.
All right, well, Mr. Kelly, while you have the floor, would you and Ms. Chicketts like to back us up in the
Yeah, we'll roll back in.
agenda? Sorry about that.
Not a problem. We get so excited here when we're trying to roll
I'm going to ask
forward.
Aaron to do this time. I did the last meeting, so I want to share equally.
That's your motivation?
That's my motivation.
Okay.
It shouldn't be too painful or too confusing. I'm not going to hit on every single line item here. As everybody's seen the budget, they have a general idea of what's sitting in front of them. If there's a line item that I don't hit on, by all means, just bring it up. I'm going to try to hit on the line items that I think that'll probably draw the most attention, the most questions. I think if you go down to page 1 on line 29, you'll see contractual and legal fees. Last year was $50,000. That was adjusted up to $50,000. A lot of it was due to anticipation with things going on at the Portsmouth Commons. We budgeted up to $75,000. That may be excessive, but the truth is no matter who you talk to, you really don't know what that could be. And so we felt it was safe, being that this is a June to June. This was a good number to put in there. Chances are we'll go underneath it, and this is outside counsel. This doesn't include the counsel we have here because this is third-party counsel. We felt with that number, it might give us an opportunity to not have to come back and revise the budget to make any more adjustments. You'll see in the next one under line 30, contractual other. You'll notice there's a severe drop in the budget, and it might cause most people to pause to go from a budget of $281,000 to $45,000. A lot of what you see there is for the work that was done with the North Pier out here. So that is not anticipated to repeat or to happen again. Therefore, it's not something we're anticipating for again. Which is reflective if you look at page 3 under Zero Harbor Center Court. You'll notice it dropped down from 260 to 15. And again, if you go down to Victory Village, you see legal at 50 to 75. Everything else is pretty straightforward. You'll notice that the High Street property with Evans Electric, which is the old Chesapeake Bay Auto, and you've also got the 1021 High Street, the former Mary Jane Bakery. You got $15,000 set aside just for whatever may come about trying to get those properties squared away. As we know, phase 1 and phase 2 have already been put together and pop up. So those are the ones that I really noticed were big changes and swings. If there's any other questions anybody has, I think this is a good opportunity to put them on the the table and see what we can talk about.
Well, I just want to say thank you to both of you for getting this done for us and the work that
staff
was in.
is very
Yeah, the staff probably did more work than anybody. Absolutely.
Thanks to all that were involved with that, so.
And to Lee, she's not here, but Lee, she was very helpful too.
Well,
Motion.
committee would,
I'd be happy to make my own motion here.
Well, I'll do it.
All right.
I move that we accept the proposed budget that has been presented.
Second.
all right. And if there's no further discussion, then we'll do a roll call on that.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
Motion carries. Budget is approved for FY18.
All right, all right. Okay, Mr. Moore, maybe we could turn things over to you, get back on track with a teaser that took you right up to the line and
All right,
we
all
move
right.
back. So.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Economic Development staff has received two separate facade improvement applications. We will start with 450 Dinwiddie Street. That application was received from Monumental United Methodist Church. They are looking to scrape, prime, and paint the facade, paint the louvers of the steeple, and paint 3 double doors on their current facility. We do have with us today, in case there are any further questions outside of what staff can answer, we do have Mr. Barham, Mr. Epperson, and Reverend Sochet, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, from Monumental United Methodist Church. The application, and I will apologize, on both applications, it looks like we inadvertently left off the second quote or the multiple quotes that we received, but we did receive multiple quotes for these applications. For this application, we received 2 quotes. The quote that was chosen by the church is the quote in the amount of $37,876. Now, based off of the application, they are allowed a 15% contingency, so the amount that they would be allowable would total $43,557.40. Half of that would total right around $22,000. However, what has been received is previously, back in October of 2014, there was a facade improvement grant that was approved by the commission or by the authority. That was in the amount of $3,530. Therefore, the amount that they will be allowable for this application, and it would exhaust to $25,000, would be $21,470 for this application. Try to keep it short, sweet, and to the point, but I stand for any questions that you all have.
I have a question. Who's here? Right behind you. Hi, how are you? How are you all doing? With your church, is it incorporated?
We are not incorporated.
You're not incorporated at any level, okay. With your organization, do you require that your board of trustees or your officers do something in your minutes that approves your submitting the application?
Yes, that's been done through a charge conference.
For this specific application?
Yes.
Okay, I've had a conversation already with Mr. Moore about it, if we could be provided a copy of that in the application. It had been discussed before, but it was before Mr. Moore took over the program. So just wanted to get clarification, because I know in our church organization, anytime there's an application, then your church officers and the minutes have to so indicate and reflect that that is the case.
Well, Mr. Barham here is the chair of the trustees. Megan Sochet is our pastor. So yes,
Okay.
we've gone through all the process.
Right, and so just, provide a copy.
Yeah, we can provide those
Sure.
minutes to the board and the department package.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question.
Yeah, because we didn't come up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make clear for disclosure that I'm a former member of Monumental. My mother is still a member there, and I have done work there in the past, although I have no current dealings there, and I've talked to council. There doesn't seem to be any violation of interest, but I want for transparency to make sure that's clear. Additionally, I was under the impression there was some other projects going on over there. Is that correct?
This is a part of a much
800,000.
larger project. I'm sure if any of you have ridden down there, you've seen our steeple, which in pretty bad shape. We are in the process of beginning the restoration of that entire steeple, which is going to be completely stripped down and replaced with slate, which should last us another 150 to 200 years. Between the steeple, the louvers at the base of the belfry, and then the complete facade, we should have basically a completely restored building.
And what is the total amount the church is getting ready to expend?
We are prepared to spend up to $800,000.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that, thought that was relevant.
Yeah, it was
Make sure
in the
everybody was clear
application
about that, though, that
about
that's
that.
the investment that they're making. And
Really very
Oh, yeah.
small.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
This is not necessarily with this particular application, but I would like, before I vote on both of these, I'd like for us to think about reconvening the ad hoc committee to review our program again, just on the very basis of how we handled the nonprofits. But secondly, the other item that came about from the VITA was the use of the facade improvement grant for signage. I know we took that away, but I wanted to be on the record of, because every place that offered a facade improvement grant included signage, and I think we need to revisit that. So I want to make sure that I'm on the record prior to my vote on this, if we can think about.
And some of them
Are
had,
you volunteering to chair the committee?
I'll be happy to chair the committee, actually.
and some of them had
That's on the
caps
record now,
sign.
too, so I just want to...
But there was a cap on the signage,
There was caps on the
too.
signage.
So I think that's maybe something we should revisit, but I wanted to make sure I was on the record before I took that vote.
And generally speaking, the committee has convened annually so that the rules, regulations, guidelines can be adopted once and carried forward for 12 months so that all applicants know exactly what is permitted, what is not, and that it's not a moving target on a monthly basis, but that is the program set in place for a particular calendar or particular period of 12 months.
I understand that, but, I just think we probably should look to reconvene that, and I think that there was some discussion amongst this very group that wasn't 100% committed to the work of the previous work, but I do think we need to revisit, especially the signage.
Okay, so do we have a motion on this?
I move to approve the application as
Oh, are we
presented.
approving these together or separately?
No, just we're only
Just the
working
one on
right now.
Monumental first, okay.
Move approval.
Okay.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
Motion carries, and the facade improvement grant for 450 Dinwiddie Street is approved.
All right, fantastic.
All right, thank you. And we'll go to the next application, which is 319 High Street, I think commonly referred to as Cafe Europa. This has been submitted by the owner, Mr. Simcoe, and he's looking to replace 4 awnings. There would be one awning, the large awning on the first level of the facade, and then the 3 awnings on the second story. Again, his initial quote is $3,350. And again, I apologize for inadvertently leaving out the additional quotes. But what we have with the 15% contingency, the amount would be $3,852.50, thereby leaving him with an actual grant award of $1,926.25. I think it is worth noting as well that this will be just another small part of a larger improvement that he is planning to do on this property, but this will be the initial step.
Make a
Is there-
motion
No, not
to
yet.
approve. There's no other questions.
Mr. Chair,
No,
is there
there are
anybody here to,
questions. Yeah.
is there anybody here to represent the property?
I do not see Mr. Simcoe
He
here.
had intended to be
He
here,
had
but
intended to be
something may
here.
have come up.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, in looking at the application for Cafe Europa, and the application name is just shown as such, but in the actual insurance documents, it's referenced as Cafe Europa Incorporated. And so as such, the application has to be appropriately signed based on the officers for the corporation, as well as having that document that says who the actual officers are of the corporation, who has the authorization to sign for the corporation. So we need to fix that for this application, and going forward, pay close attention as to how the entity is organized. That's all.
Further discussion or questions?
If there's not, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, we have first and second.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
Motion carries and facade improvement grant for 319 High Street is approved.
All right. Fantastic. Can you do that for me?
Read the whole thing?
Please.
Top to bottom? Well, let me get some.
Skipped anything else, have I?
Resolution to go into closed meeting. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of the EDA desires to enter into a closed meeting, and whereas in compliance with the requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, the topics will be discussed are set forth below in the subparagraphs of paragraphs 2.2-3711A of the Virginia Code authorizing discussion of the topics in closed session are set forth in parentheses after each topic. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners shall meet in closed meeting for the purpose of discussing disposition of publicly held real property interests, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. To include 336 Victory Boulevard, 710 Lincoln Street, 3215 Academy Avenue.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
You are now in closed session, and if appropriate parties will. Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
You are back in open session.
All righty. Do I have a motion?
We have a resolution.
Would
Would you like me to read it?
Well, you can, and somebody can move on the resolution.
I'll read the resolution, then if we can have first and second. Resolution, Verdad Real Estate, Inc., 3336 Victory Boulevard Real Estate Purchase Agreement. Whereas Verdad Real Estate, Inc., the developer, has offered to purchase 3336 Victory Boulevard, tax parcel 0498-0360, the property, which consists of approximately 0.74 acres for the purpose of constructing a fast food restaurant. And whereas EDA has negotiated a purchase and sales agreement with developer providing for a purchase price of $275,000 for the property, the agreement, and whereas conveyance and development of the property will increase Portsmouth's tax base and add another retail user to the growing Victory Boulevard corridor. Now therefore, it is hereby resolved that 1, the chair is authorized to execute the agreement on behalf of the EDA. 2, the chair, vice chair, secretary, and assistant secretary of the EDA and their designees are each hereby authorized to take such further actions and execute such further applications, documents, and instruments, including without limitation a deed conveying the property and related closing documents, as may be necessary or desirable in furtherance of the conveyance and development of the property in accordance with the agreement, as the same may be amended from time to time, provided, however, that any subsequent amendment to the agreement shall be subject to the prior authorization of the Board of Commissioners. This resolution shall be effective immediately upon its adopted May 30th.
So moved.
Second.
And Scott was second.
Okay. Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
No.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
Motion carries, and the contract will proceed.
All right. With no further business, we stand adjourned. Thank everyone for their participation in conversation today.
Projects.